In this video, we are going to see how to create AngularJS project. As you can see, these are the data which is fetching from the database. And this is the API link we would be using to fetch data from the database. And this data shows the worldwide. And if you type some country name on the input field, you will see the data related to the country. This is the 7th AngularJS project. To follow along, I'll leave the source code in the description. Fine. Now let me show you how the API looks like. This is the JSON data we will be getting. In the JSON data, we need the confirmed cases, which is in the value, and then the recovered, and then the death value. Now, let me remove all the HTML directive and start from scratch. And also let me remove all the script so that I can start from scratch so that we can follow along. You can see there are no data at present. So we have a bootstrap CSS and a style sheet for ourselves, and then we have a Google font loaded, and then the AngularJS CDN along with my script tag, which I have linked on the head section. So you can see there's a jumbotron which will give you the background color gray, and inside we have a container, and inside the container we have those section along with the input field. So let me remove all the directive, AngularJS directive. Fine, this is the data, this is the section, the paragraph and heading is static, and this heading is also confirmed recovered and is confirmed recovered, and death is also static. So the h5 is the tag where we would be dynamically replacing the triple x, or you can say the xxx, with the data of Angular. Fine. Now we're going to make a Angular app. We want the whole HTML to be Angular, so for that I'll use ng app. I'm going to define an ng app, which is an Angular app. I need to fetch all the data inside the HTML. So for that I need a controller. To get the controller, I need to initialize the Angular app. So let me initialize the Angular app, and let me store it into a variable called app. So this reference is the app name, and inside whatever is there we can access it using the controller. So for that, let me create a controller on the body tag itself, and you have to give the controller name so that you can access it on the script file. With the help of reference to the Angular, I'm calling the class controller, and going to pass two parameters. The first one is the controller name, and the second one what the controller need to do. The controller has two parameter, which is scope and HTTP. We would be using fetch we would be fetching data from URL, so the HTTP would be useful to access whatever directive inside the Angular app that can be accessed using the $scope variable. Fine. Now what we are going to do is we are going to get the URL and store it into a variable called URL. It is not going to get changed, that's why I have made constant. So with the help of HTTP, it has a function called get. We need to pass the URL, and we will be getting the callback to whether it is success. The success lies on the left side, and the error function lies on the right side. So we'll get the success. So let me show you on the console what success we get. We'll be simply getting the URL, sorry, the JSON object which I have shown you. Instead of success, it is going to be response. You can give any name, that's why I did. If there is an error, it will show an error. Fine. Now let's get into the inspect so that we can see console message. For that, you need to refresh the page. You can see the data is getting fetched, but the actual data is inside the data property. So response dot data. So if you see, it will exclude the header portion. Fine. And in that we just need the confirmed case, so we get the confirmed case. Fine. This data we are going to send to the HTML. To send data to the HTML, I'll store it into a variable called all data, and to pass this all data to the HTML, I'm going to use the expression, which is double curly. You can see this is it. It has, let me console it so that we can actually know what is the, let me console the response so that we can see what is the actual structure. So inside the URL we have a data property, and inside the data property we have confirmed. I think it's not we saved it. All data dot, what we need is to use the variable from controller to the HTML. We need to use scope. So the main requirement for scope is to pass data between the HTML and the controller, or you can directly access the HTML using the controller with the help of scope variable, and the other side is also possible using scope variable. You can see now the data has come. The same way we have confirmed, we have recovered, and we have deaths. You just have to replace the property name accordingly, and so you'll get the worldwide statistics. Fine, that is working. Now let's create the search section. So whenever I type on something, I want a div should show up. This div will simply be same as this div above. So let me place it inside container, so that we can get some space on left and right. It's not actually space, it's a margin. So whenever I type on something, I want a heading to get populated as well. So let me keep this so that we can reuse it just by changing the variable name. So let me remove the placeholder so that it can fit to our screen. We're going to use a model. So AngularJS allow us for two-way data binding. You will see what is two-way data binding over here. So I have created a variable which is in the ng model. I can use the value of the ng model on the heading using the expression. We have already seen what is expression. This is the expression, and whatever the country, whatever you type on the country, it will be stored and displayed on this heading. I can see it is working actually fine. Now we need to send these input field to the controller as well. We need to send this to the controller as well. So if it is blank, if the country is blank, don't show anything. That's what I meant. If you see, if you type something, it will show up. If you remove everything, that means it is blank, it is not showing up. Now we are going to use this change. So when there is a change, I want a function to get triggered on the controller, and that function will accept the country and pass it to a URL so that we can get the response. So this whole section is going to get copied again. So let me create a function. To access the function, we will be using scope. Now we can access this function. We need to pass the parentheses as well. Now to let me see whether we are able to access the variable country name. The country name is inside the country is simply the variable which is inside the ng model. So if you type something, you would get you changed. So that is working. The function is get triggering. Now let's access this country variable. The ng model can be accessed with the help of scope variable. Let me store it into a variable called country. Now let's pass this to the console so that we can see what we are typing. There's an error, there's a spelling mistake in the scope. It's dollar dot, I have used capital S. That's the error. So if you type something, the console should populate with the text of the input field, and that is working. We are able to access the country ng model in the controller. Now we are going to pass this country to the URL. So if you see, the URL is simply the API URL. So there is an option after API. We need to pass countries along with the country name. So if you can get the details over here also. You can see you're getting the country related JSON value. Fine. Now let me replace the URL. We just need this portion to be static. So let me make it string, and then let me pass the country name, which is stored in the country variable. Let me remove the URL. Let's see, everything should work fine, and we should get the proper response on the console. We are getting the status as 404. That means we are not able to fetch the data. Let me see why. Let me replace it with the URL. And we have added the variable country to the last, and again it is showing the 404. We are getting the response and consoling it. So let us try with the backtick. URL is a variable which holds our API URL, and then we are passing the static value countries, and again you can see there is value we are getting. Now we are getting the value, and we will be getting the response on the data, response.data. The same way we are going to store it into a variable. You can see you are getting the value. The same way, store it to a variable and pass the variable to the HTML with the help of scope variable. And you can see the data is getting populated as per the value you have passed on the text field. That's all for this video. Thank you so much for listening.